It is our final tune-up before the Masters. It is the Valero Texas Open coming up this week at TPC San Antonio, and a couple of big names still yet to qualify for the Masters. So quite a bit on the line this week. No Dustin Johnson, but Jordan Spieth the favorite, which is a good enough headliner to begin with. So let's dive on in and break it down. Get you set for this week's DFS contest. Welcome on into the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, powered by numberFire. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, joined here as always by Brandon Gdula. He is the managing editor for numberFire.com. Brandon, final event before the Masters DFS contest already up on FanDuel. So how you doing today?
Could be better, honestly. Got a little caught up in the match play last week, so I missed out on a Joel Damon win. So I was just like, I'm going to focus all my attention on the match play in terms of betting. And, Joel Damon finally won. And someone who's lost a lot of money on Joel Damon over the years, it does hurt a little bit. But, I mean, we got the Valero. Not the best field, but definitely not quite as bad as what we've had in some recent weeks. And, of course, like you said, Masters Week is upcoming. So, I'll come around in just a bit. But I'm still kind of bummed because we love Joel Damon on this podcast. And
it was almost even worse because not only did you miss the Joel Damon win, but when Damon was accepting the trophy, his hat almost flew away. And I know that you, as someone who just loves bucket hats, probably would have been distraught, heartbroken, like emotionally torn if that thing had actually been lost to sea.
So you're being ironic by saying that I love bucket hats?
No, I was being totally serious. Do you not love bucket hats?
They're not for me, but I'm a firm believer that your hat game just has to match you. And so it fits with Joel Damon. So
the Bryson hat fits with Bryson. So yeah, this makes sense.
Yeah, it's not for me. I don't like the hat, but I think it fits with Bryson. Take that for what it's worth.
I think that said all you needed to say there for sure. With this field, I think that it's buzzy is the word that I would use for it because, we did lose Dustin Johnson, but honestly, having DJ in this field might have been kind of boring. Instead, we get Jordan Spieth as a favorite the week before Augusta. Not only is he the favorite, he's a favorite in his home state. So potentially some topics of discussion there. We're going to dive on in and get you set for this event here in just 1 second. But first, letting you know about our schedule for this week. And it's a fun one because MLB kicking off this week. Our first MLB solo shot of the year will be on Wednesday. So if you listen to this on Tuesday, it's tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern on the FanDuel YouTube page. We'll be recording the solo shot there. We'll go up on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed immediately after. So if you're trying to get set for opening day with lock at 1 on Thursday, you can tune in Wednesday night and get set for that. Our regular Q&A sessions will be at 4 p.m. every weekday, but because lock is early for opening day, we'll have that at noon on Wednesday or on Thursday instead. So solo shot for opening day is 4 p.m. Wednesday. Q&A is at noon on Thursday, and then our regular schedule begins on Friday with the solo shot at 9 and the Q&A at 4 p.m. We also, of course, still have Brandon's Q&A. That's at 3:30 p.m. today, Tuesday, if you're watching here on the FanDuel YouTube page. So just make sure you subscribe to the FanDuel YouTube page, also on Twitch, Facebook, and Periscope for the Q&As. I guess it's the last day for Periscope or last 2 days, but whatever, you're there, whatever. Regardless, you can watch it wherever you want. Get those questions in to ask Brandon about the Valero Texas Open. I'm sure he probably has stuff for the Masters too. If you want to talk betting for that, I'm going to put you on the spot because why not? But you can ask that today, 3:30 p.m. Eastern on the FanDuel YouTube page. No NASCAR podcast this week, but still having NBA and NHL stuff from Tom Vecchio and, of course, UFC from Austin Swaim as well. Let's dive in now to the Valero Texas Open. As mentioned, it's at TPC San Antonio, which is 7,494 yards and a par 72. And if you're looking at course history for this event, there won't be any from last year because this is one of the events that got axed due to COVID. This is, as mentioned, the final chance for golfers to qualify for the Masters. So a couple of guys not currently in the field, Ricky Fowler and Charlie Hoffman. I think those are the two big ones that are noteworthy. Hoffman especially, a guy who can do pretty well here, as we'll talk about later on, but also been golfing pretty well. So that's noteworthy for him. Fowler, whatever. There are 144 golfers in the field. The top 65 plus ties make it after the first two rounds, make the cut. So finding golfers to make the cut will be paramount once again this weekend. Now, Brandon, We had to go back here to 2019 to try to get course history data on TPC San Antonio. When you go back there, what numbers pop as far as being relevant for this weekend?
So I'm going to derail it a little bit. Before the show, I was trying to figure out which hat to put on. I didn't like the hat that I had on, and I just grabbed a different hat.
How much thought do you put into this before each podcast, by the way?
I don't put a whole lot of thought into it, but if it looks not great.
It's also very weird that you're the hat guy, given I'm the bald one. Like, you'd think that I'd be the hat. You actually have very good hair. I don't. You would think that I'd be the hat guy, and I'm not. And I feel like we should probably renegotiate this.
Well, I have a San Antonio Spurs hat, and we're at TPC San Antonio. So maybe it's like subliminal. Maybe
okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, I like it.
But, yeah, TPC San Antonio, I don't know. It doesn't really specifically, in terms of the data, favor ball striking or short game per se. But we do see kind of a swap and not a swap, but we see around the green play mattering more than usual. So it kind of takes up more of the short game between around the green play and putting. So you can kind of bump up around the green play. I would just caution that, yes, it's proportionally way more important here than it is at your usual course, but it's still not that important. You're not going to just roster the golfers who are best around the green. It's not really a winning strategy long term. So just keep that in mind. Corey Connors actually won here in 2019 by losing strokes around the green. None of the top 4 gained strokes around the green. So really, when you dig in, what you see is like you can sort of wedge your way to success, but you don't have to. So, it's not a must to be really good around the green, which is super relevant because a lot of golfers right around the 10,000 range are some of our favorite golfers, but aren't specifically good around the green. So I'm going to overlook that a bit. Short but accurate drivers can contend if they're hitting fairways. So it's like, I know you sometimes use good drive rate, which is either a fairway hit or if you miss the fairway but hit a green in regulation, that's a good drive. Probably not the worst week for that, but we still typically would prefer strokes it off the tee. I don't want to speak for you, but that's where I would be. The 4 par 5s are pretty long. They're all 554 longer. Your like average par 5 is like 560 on the PGA Tour. The par 3s, or 3 of them, are really short. So like we have some short par 3s, long par 5s. So I don't really view it as like a catch-all kind of a course. I think that different guys can contend. But long par 5s generally get me to lean more toward distance than accuracy. So my key stats this week, kind of basic, honestly, but kind of all-encompassing as well. Strokes gained approach, always number 1. Driving distance, strokes gained around the green. And I'm just going to go with birdie rate. We've seen scores go lower here. In recent years, it doesn't always happen, but birdie rate leads to FanDuel scoring anyway.
Yeah, so regarding the off the tee play, I think that overall the wise play might be to just downplay off the tee play overall. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, honestly, and I don't know what I've done in the past because it's been, quite some time since we really dug in here.
And our process has changed a lot since then.
Yeah, so I have to name key stats for the section for the primer that I do on numberFire, but I wasn't really finding myself drawn toward any must-have stats aside from strokes gained approach, just because it's the most sort of predictive, and it's the stat that you can game the most on the field in just each and every week. So I just I peppered in some stuff, but I'm not really looking at a specific statistical profile for a change. It's a little more about recent form, sort of just overall assumed course fit. And honestly, this week, if we're talking just specifically FanDuel, without Dustin Johnson, the salaries are not what you would typically see, with salaries basically starting at 11.5 instead of the 12,000 range, which is it's not massive, but it is noteworthy. And then the 9,000 range itself, I would say from 9,000 to 97, all pretty rough, lots of red flags. So for me, I'm just trying to pick the better golfers, which again, we joke about sometimes, but in this field, I think a balanced approach right around that 10,000 range going to get you the access to the most quote unquote good golfers before that drop off occurs. So I'm not going to let the stats dictate and something Sam Burns is not good around the green, so I'm not going to play him when I like everything else about him. So that's kind of where I am this week. I don't know. Talk to me with what you're seeing here.
Yeah, so off the tee stuff, looking back at previous years here at TPC San Antonio, what you see is a lot of guys who excel at different things doing well, which I think bodes well for kind of what you said, taking an all-around approach, where you don't need to play up any single stat. But I think that what that led me to was if I go just generic strokes gained off the tee, I'm not just looking at distance, but like the overlap there is enough where I'm a little bit uncomfortable with it. So I decided to go with good drives gained instead, as you alluded to, because
nice. I knew it was a good drive week for you.
Right. Because like I want golfers who can get the job done. I don't care how they get the job done. Part of that, that would be off the tee, strokes gained off the tee. But I think because distance has not been a requirement, I don't want to filter out guys who may not have great distance. So like, I guess like Abraham Answer. I guess I don't know. Like I don't have his off the tee numbers directly here, but I know he's good in good drives again. I think that he's someone
he's good off the tee, but it's because he's so accurate.
Right, exactly. And I don't want to filter him out because of a lack of distance or something like that. Because I think that he actually does fit this pretty well. So that was kind of my thought process, was trying to make sure I'm not crossing off golfers because they don't do one thing exceptionally well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm playing Zach Johnson this week, so.
I mean, just a bomber, right? Just total bomber. So I think that was where I was coming from for this. If you look back at the past data, it was a lot of mixed stuff. There was no definitive one. So I think we're on the same page there. You don't need to be one thing. You don't need to be the other thing. Just be a good golfer. And again, it's a joke, but like it is serious too. We're going to dive into golfers who have done well at TPC San Antonio in the past in just 1 second. But first, as mentioned, contests for the Masters already posted over on FanDuel.com, including the PGA Mega Eagle contest. It's a $1 million total prize pool, $200,000 going to first place. 23.3% of the field will get paid for this event. Entry fees for this one, I actually forgot to pull this up, so whatever. $15 per entry in the PGA Mega Eagle contest. Again, $1 million in total prizes, $200,000 per place, $15 entry. If you want to get in for the Masters, which we'll be discussing next week, I think. I don't know, we haven't really discussed this. Either way, we'll figure it out. Dictate our schedule for next week. Really prepared for this one. $15 entry, and we'll get you set for that one next week. Go over to FanDuel.com. Eligibility restrictions apply. Let's dive in here to past history. Take a look at golfers who have done well at TPC San Antonio in the past. And Brandon, starting off with a guy who was interesting, I guess, this past week, but also is someone who fits in that mold where we don't want to cross certain guys off because they don't do something particularly well. And that's Matt Kuchar. Matt Kuchar, $10,100. What are you seeing with him?
Yeah, a lot of FaceTime for Kuchar with his match against Scotty Scheffler, and then playing in the consolation at the match play. But he's returning to a course where he's had success. Kuchar at TPC San Antonio has made 8 consecutive cuts with top 25s, 5 top 25s. And his most recently finished 7th while gaining 8.6 strokes from approach with poor short game. He actually hasn't really putted well here, like overall lately. And sometimes I think that could actually have something to do with the greens. If a good putter just isn't necessarily putting well, long term, but it does explain most of the poor finishes beforehand, ranging from 40th to 51st. So like the super recent finishes haven't been anything amazing, but the question sort of becomes, does a lack of high-end studs with Matt Kuchar being Matt Kuchar at least and being somewhat of a big name, his good showing at the match play, return to a course where he's played well, like maybe that's enough to kind of get in on Kuchar at a reasonable salary. But the recent stats, obviously not amazing. 45th percentile in adjusted long-term strokes gained tee to green, which is just, I keep my own database and adjust it for field strength and recency. 45th percentile in this field tee to green. Of course, 95th percentile in putting. So, I'm very into a balanced build. Kuchar, still probably not on the list, but I'm not, I haven't written him off like I typically would. So any reads here for you on Matt Kuchar?
I agree that I like the balanced build. I just think that there are enough guys in the range I'd prefer over him that even though I will be in this range more than usual, I don't think that will include him. I think that you talked about looking at the golfers around $10,000, partly because you don't like the mid to low 9,000 range. But I think another part of that is because the high 9,000 range is really good. Like the guys right behind Kuchar and right above him too are really solid. So I think that because I have golfers I like in both directions, both higher salaried and lower salaried than him, I don't see myself going there. And like they have better recent form than him. And the match play is good. The match play matters because it's tough competition, but
I don't think it matters much.
Okay, well, yeah, that's fair. But like, I'd rather someone be good there than bad there, and he was good there.
Sure.
In that sense, it matters. But it's not enough to draw me in. One of the golfers who could fit in that discussion as being near Kuchar, fitting a balanced build, could be interesting is Ryan Palmer. He's 10-7, and it feels higher than we're used to, but like, it makes sense, not only because he's golfing well, but also he's a guy who has done well here specifically. Palmer has missed back-to-back cuts at this event, but before that, he had 3 straight top 6 finishes. He gained at least 4.3 on approach in 2 of those events. In the other one, he gained 3.9 putting, but he was still 5.5 tee to green in that event. Palmer golfing really well right now. He was 17th at the Players. He has gained at least 2 on approach in 4 of 6 events since January 1st. So he's golfing well. He has good history here. And his history now is better than it was when he missed those 2 cuts in 2019 and 2018. So where are you at with Ryan Palmer at 10-7 this week?
Definitely not out. I have him 5th in long-term adjusted strokes gained total, which I think I'm starting to had a phase with it. And then I moved into like the more granular stuff. And now I'm kind of back to it because I think, it's probably a very good stat to rely on kind of overall, especially when we're trying to separate these lukewarm sort of fields that, have some names, but not everyone's in good form, like Kuchar, for example. So for Palmer, I mean, the ball striking data is always there. He's really good in approach of 98th percentile in this field. We know that he's pretty long off the tee. His main issue is the putter, specifically on Bermuda, not particularly good there.
I think that that's kind of the main thing that's keeping me away from Palmer because, like, I think I like him, but it's why I'm going to prioritize others because if I'm going to use a bad putter, I'm probably going to use Corey Connors, like most likely in this range. And there are guys in this range around him who don't have the downsides with the putter. Abe Answer, Cam Tringali are both guys who I think fit pretty well for what I want this week. So Palmer is probably someone I wouldn't be shocked if I wind up using Ryan Palmer, but he's not a priority given that there are other golfers in this tier who I think grade out really well. One of them could be Charlie Hoffman. We talked about before, needs to qualify for the Masters. You're going to talk about him as your second guy here in the course history section. He is 10-5, and Hoffman seems like one of those guys who comes to play when he needs to, as far as trying to get himself into the Masters. So what are you seeing with Hoffman here at $10,500?
Yeah, I'm actually, like, for the event form and current form, I'm actually talking about a lot of golfers in like the 10K range, but I think it's important because it all drops off from there anyway. So I think it's not that bad to kind of talk about these guys and figure out who we actually should prioritize. But yeah, Hoffman's a former winner here back in 2016, was runner-up in 2019, the most recent event. That goes along with, in total, 7 top 15 finishes and 9 tries since 2011, 4 top 3 finishes. We talked about him a ton last week, saying he was our favorite play for sure at the Corrales Punta Cana. Was golfing pretty well, but ended up 34th, so I think maybe people might just overlook that. But for their more recent stats, like I have him in the 92nd percentile in adjusted approach numbers, 83rd in distance, all while being a strong Bermuda putter in the 77th percentile. I think he's a very fine play at 10-5. Again, I'm looking at a balanced build this week. Hoffman fits it. I think we'll probably get that course form bump in terms of popularity, but I haven't actually dug into those expected numbers just yet.
Where does Hoffman grade out for you relative to Tringali, Answer, and Connors? Because those are the guys that we're going to talk about Connors later, but like, where does he grade out for you compared to them? Like, is he on the same level as them for you?
Connors clearly number 1.
Okay.
He's about even with Tringali at their salaries. I'm not particularly interested in Abe Answer.
Okay, so we're going to fight on him later. I'm looking forward to dueling with you about.
How would you rank them?
I don't know. I think that I didn't actually think about this
You
before I
seem
asked
so
you.
so ready to go, and
Well, I was
like,
ready to fight you on answer, and that distracted me. I think that I'd put Hoffman last of them, but I think they're all like interesting to me, and I think I could see myself using any of them. I would probably go. I would go Connors first for sure. I would put. I might put Answer second, then Tringali, and then Hoffman.
even at
I,
their salaries.
yeah, I mean it's
Okay.
$400 between Answer and or $500 between Answer and Tringali. Who cares?
It's not. Yeah, but the difference between like 10-9 and 10-4 is going to get you possibly another golfer in the upper 9K range or someone in that low 9K range.
Maybe, maybe not. Who can say?
Yeah, who knows how math works?
Yeah, exactly. We'll talk about that later on because I do have answer my player picks, so I can pick on you for him later. We do have Connors later on too, and Spieth. So we'll talk about the upper guys. But I think this is overall, I would say it's a very good range. Would you agree with that? The 10-4 to 11,000 range?
Yeah, I will say, like, kind of figuring out who I was going to pick here took a lot more work. Well, the 9K range took a lot of work because I didn't want to have to pick anybody. For this range, it was more, picking between some better options.
I think that I like the 8,000 range a decent amount, which might influence things.
I like the 8,000 range and 9,000 exactly. There are like numerous names there.
Right.
Some heat check favorites: Sebastian Munoz, Eric Van Rooyen, those guys. So they're back on the menu this week. But just a heads up, fansharesports.com does have Ryan Palmer leading in tags. And then in second is Jordan Spieth, Charlie Hoffman.
So everyone we've discussed or will discuss. All right, cool.
So let's talk about
Ryan Moore.
Spieth versus Finau is going to be super interesting.
I don't think it'll be interesting. I think people are so out on Finau that they just won't go there.
Well,
like that's I base everything on Twitter though, and Twitter is probably not the right way to judge these things. But I would bet that Spieth is heavily favored in that duel there. Let's talk about Ryan Moore, the other Ryan in the upper range. He is one of the guys who benefits from a not strictly distance course, and I think it shows with what he has done here in the past because Moore has been here 3 total times, and he's been the top 20 each time. That includes top 10s in 2018 and 2019. In 2018, we saw Moore gain 6.1 on approach and 9.3 tee to green and finished 7th there. Gained 5.7 on approach in 2019. Totally beasted out on the greens and finished 3rd there. Now, Ryan Moore is not a plus putter, and that's tough to bank on him duplicating that putting performance, but he's 5th in good drives gained, 27th in approach, so he should excel in the ball striking department. The form for Ryan Moore, pretty bad, with 4 missed cuts and 6 events since January 1st, but he did make the cut at the Players, and he can better compete at a non-distance course, which this is. The problem, Brandon, is that we like this range a lot. So we have to like a guy quite a bit to use him over the other guys in this range. Does Moore do enough for you to overcome the really tough competition?
No, I have him just not even close to the other golfers in this range in terms of his long-term form. I don't think he fits the course particularly well. But I think it depends a lot on how you're actually distance, if at all. Like, you don't have to. I am, so I don't really view him as a fit for me this week, despite the course form. So I'm pretty easily out on Ryan Moore. I'm just going to try to get up to that next tier with, I'm sure we can probably agree on maybe Cameron Davis. We both like him a lot generally, but Sam Burns, Zach Johnson more specifically. So I'm probably not going to get there with Ryan Moore. And if I have to jump down to 9,000, I'll probably just do that.
I would say Lonto Griffin at 10,000. It's a little bit more expensive, but I'd also put him in that range. I'm not as into Davis, but I am really into Burns. I like Johnson, and I think that Lonto Griffin's someone I'd like too. So even though I'll be in this range a lot, I don't know if that will necessarily lead to me using more. Probably not. I think I like him more than you do because I'm not emphasizing distance at all. But I do think that there's enough there still for me to not get there, despite liking him more than you do. So let's go to the current form section and talk about, I would say, 2 of the bigger names outside of Finau in this field. We're going to talk about actually 3 guys in the upper range here. You have Connors, then I'll talk Spieth, and we'll break down the studs. How about that?
Yeah, let's do that. I mean, a real mea culpa on my part because everyone I wrote up was like 10-5 and above. So
we got Sam Ryder coming up later on at 8-9, so we're good. The value play is coming to save us.
Corey Connors, quite just a heater for him right now. 7th at the Players, 3rd at the Arnold Palmer, 17th at the Waste Management Phoenix Open. Some top 20s at the tail end of 2020 as well. And, coming from Connors, it's, from what Corey Connors does well, and that's with just elite ball striking, specifically the irons right now, looking very, very good for me. Connors also putting well, which is one of those things where it's, did he make a change? Is he going to regress? Maybe all of the bad putting. Maybe he was always a good putter, and all of the bad putting he accrued is now slingshotting him back up to regression level, which is like a very good putter. I mean, who's to say?
How math works.
If his long-term baseline is a plus putter, and he's not hitting that because he's been so far off, it can slingshot up. It could happen. I don't think that's the case, but it could fall
all
back.
The math people listening to this podcast are just like putting their head through a wall.
That's fine. I mean, I'm an English lit major, so I do.
And I was a journalism major. Like we are actively opposed to math on this podcast.
But all we talk about is data. So
correct. Yes.
The form's there for Connors. He's the defending champ. I think that he'll get a lot of attention. Finished 26th in his only other try here in 2018. So it's like, he probably could have fit from like an event form standpoint, but the current form is much more easily the talking point with Connors, who's in the 98th percentile in adjusted tee to green play. Best approach player when adjusted for field over the past year in my database. Not a great short game, which we know, but the putting, again, if you adjusted it, like, it's not that bad. So I'm not that concerned about Connors at all. I think he's one of the best plays of the week. So talk to me about Spieth, and then we'll go over the top of this field.
Yeah, so Spieth is now the favorite with Dustin Johnson withdrawing, and you can understand why with how well he's golfing. Spieth spoke last week, I think it was on a podcast, about how a hand injury may have contributed to the downswing that he had back in 2018. And he says that he can't feel that hand injury. He had like loose bodies, which is always the most gross term that can exist for an injury. He had like loose bodies in his hand, which just makes me very squeamish. But he said he can't feel that anymore. So the super recent form here is going to be, I would think, the most relevant for Spieth. And that super recent form, very good. In 6 events since January 1st, he has 3 top 5s. He has gained at least 4 in approach in 4 of those, and he's been just his regular self with a short game too. The one question mark with Spieth is the driving. He is still 121st in the field in good drives gained the past 50 rounds. The placement is the one thing that hasn't quite come back yet, but Spieth has gained off the tee, albeit minimally, in 3 of the past 4 events. So that may be improving too. So how are you handling Spieth here? I want to hear about your thoughts on him specifically first, then we'll broaden it to be about Connors and the rest of the studs.
So I think Spieth is like very justifiable. I think you can probably just play Jordan Spieth and Tony Finau together if you view those as the top 2. It's kind of rare that you can play the top 2 studs because usually you're looking at like 12-1 and like 11-9 or something. So we're getting some savings from that. But what he does best is still the short game. What he does worst is just being accurate with the driver. But he's like, people always, like, whenever people talk about the distance conversation and they bring up Jordan Spieth, it's like, oh, he's not long, but like, he's not short. He's like fine with his distance. And so I think that keeps him in play this week. And when you can say, look, we know around the green play can bail you out. We know that putting is always something that can be, it's always important, right? So I think Spieth is actually a pretty justifiable play with how his irons are going right now. So long as he doesn't get into super trouble off the tee.
That's my concern, though, is I think that he could get into super trouble. So I think that the word you used is correct and justifiable. The route that would get me to deviate is if Spieth is very popular, which I'm assuming is the case. Like, that's my baseline assumption, is that he'll be very popular, which is fine. Like, that's fair, but I think that there is an avenue to him disappointing, and that avenue to him disappointing is enough for me to deviate from him if he is, as I would assume he is, the most popular play.
Yeah, I mean, my research in the past has shown betting favorite, always the most popular, basically, and highest salary golfer, always the most popular. And when you have both, pretty much a lock, and especially with Spieth coming in to Masters Week, playing in Texas, I think that he will be Pretty, I would say prohibitively chalky this week almost.
Okay, so we have the home state narrative with Texas. We have the Masters coming up next week. When's his birthday? July. Okay, so we don't have the birthday narrative. I don't think we have like a new dad narrative. So like we're missing out on a couple of narratives. We're checking 2 out of like the 4 biggest boxes.
Well, no more loose bodies narrative.
Oh gosh, please don't say that word anymore. We need to move on. I think that Connor's the top stud. Do you agree?
No, I think it's Tony Finau very easily.
Okay, very easily.
Yeah.
Because of the putting? Or what?
Because he's Tony Finau and he's just substantially better than Corey Connors.
Substantially?
By about 4.5 strokes per round over the past year. He's better.
Okay, but over the past 6 months, it's 0.02 per round.
Well, a 1 year sample is more predictive than a 6 month sample.
Yeah, but Corey Connors has gotten better.
Okay. I mean, I think the one name clearly getting overlooked in the top range is Scotty Scheffler.
Okay. Is he in your player picks?
He's not.
Okay, pitch me on Scheffler now then.
Second best long-term golfer in the field behind Finau. Playing in Texas. Like it has to be a top 3 bet to lead this field in strokes gained tee to green. He's going to be the one guy out of the top 4 between Connors, who's on that run, coming off a win here most recently. Tony Finau still being good, and then Spieth being Spieth. Scheffler is the most likely just to go under the radar.
Do you want to? I don't know how I feel about this one because I think they're pretty even. But do you want to do a Connor versus Scheffler head-to-head?
Like for FanDuel points?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll do that. I mean, I like Connors probably better from a process play, but for the assumed popularity decrease, I'm cool going Scheffler.
Okay, perfect. So I like Connors over Scheffler. You have Scheffler there. Let's move on to Brendan Steele, back in that pretty juicy 10,000 range. He's 10-6. What are you seeing with him right now?
Yeah, again, I didn't realize everyone was like right here. So again, mea culpa. But Steele rounding into form, some strong finishes to his name, specifically over the past 3 starts. 18th at the Arnold Palmer, 41st at the Players, 3rd at the Honda. He's made 7 straight cuts since the start of the new year. Virtually all of them coming with strong tee to green data, including 5.2 or more strokes gained tee to green in 4 of the 7. The 3rd place finish came when he put together the tee to green and the putting, which is always what you want. And he has some solid form at TPC San Antonio, including a win way back in 2011. He's made 8 of 9 cuts here as well, 4 top 15s. The recent stats quite good: 92nd percentile adjusted tee to green, 82nd percentile or better in all 3. So I guess the real question here is, this would be a good spot to kind of hammer home our initial lineup construction thoughts, because you can play Spieth and Finau or Spieth and Connors, whoever you can play 2 of those top 4, and you can jump down to like 9,000 in the 8,000 range. You can do that, or you can say, I don't really like how far this fall off is, coming around 9,700. So I'm trying to play as many golfers in the 10K range as I can. Which are you leaning more toward?
I think what I'm leaning towards is, I think I want to go 2 studs who I like. So probably it's like right around Connors, like 11,000. I don't need it to be Spieth and Finau because I don't view Spieth as being like a priority must-have type guy for this week, especially for tournaments. I don't think he's that for cash games either. Like, he's good for cash games, not a priority. So I think that what I'll be doing is starting off there. I will probably wind up using, I think this could be bad, but I'm probably going to wind up using 2 golfers in the 9,000 range, like 91, 88. I'm looking at my exact lineup right now, and then going back to the mid-range to round out with my final 2. So what I'll wind up having is 4 golfers who are at or around or above 10,000, and then 2 who are at or above or around 9,000, which allows me to avoid that middle tier, but in more of a top-heavy type way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can see that. I think those are the 2 basic lineup constructions this week. It's kind of always the case, but I think for how this field breaks, it's actually like a very interesting conversation to have, because you can say like if you go with one golfer, probably around 9,000, and then just linger right around 10K, I think you can make a really strong balanced lineup with maybe only one weak spot. So I think like that's the conversation, because we talked about all these golfers like 98 and above. That's probably more where I'm leaning, especially for like a head-to-head.
I think it sounds like the question that we're talking about is, do you go one golfer at 9,000 or two? I think that's the dilemma we're having right now. Because if you go two, you can have two guys around 11,000 and two around 10,000, and like to me that's pretty enticing, because I can get that top end win equity and still pepper that range I like with a couple of guys there.
So I think for me, the thing that's really drawn me back is like I run the win simulations. Finau's the one outlier. He's at like 6.4%, which is still pretty low for like a full field like this. Mm-hmm. So I don't think like the actual win equity, like you're not missing out on, because I ran it with DJ. He was like 12 to 14% between the two models. That's whenever you say, look, I just got to get DJ in my lineups for the most part. But
I'm also not getting to like Finau or Spieth. I'm using guys who are beneath them, which gives me inherently a more balanced lineup.
Yeah, but like the win equity drop off comes at like 9K. So you're saying you're going to nail the guys with 2 to 3% win probability by rostering 4 golfers who actually have those win odds, as opposed to 5, possibly 6, depending on how you build a balance.
6 would be really aggressive, but I don't know. You could. I think that.
So if we just quickly to finish it, if we go back to the one golfer or two golfers around 9K,
yeah,
it's a difference between, I think, 4 realistic winners and 5.
I mean, but we're discounting the fact that Matthew NeSmith is literally guaranteed to win. So you can discount him if you want. I will not make that same mistake.
Yeah. I mean, when you put it that way, then.
Yeah. 100% win equity. What could go wrong? Speaking of guys near NeSmith and the guys in the 9,000-ish range, let's talk about Sam Ryder. He is $8,900, back-to-back top 10 finishes. One of those was the Corrales Punta Cana, which, should we even bother noting that? But regardless, finished second there. That's better than finishing 30th, so that's good. In the event before that, Ryder finished 8th at the Honda. He gained 5 on approach there and 7.92 to green. Not a great field, but better than last week's at least. And the ball striking here should be good. Ryder ranks 17th in good drives gained and 37th in approach. The one issue is that he is hideous around the green, and as you mentioned, that does pop a bit more this week than it usually does. But he's $8,900, so we're not going to find perfection down here. Do you see enough with Ryder to take a swing, or are the red flags here too red?
Over under 5th percentile and adjusted strokes gained around the green for Ryder.
Well, I'm going to guess under.
Tricked you. It's 6%.
Oh, wow. Cool
but
me,
yeah,
man.
It's very bad. It's very bad.
Yeah.
And that's the main issue. Again, you don't have to be like dialed in with the wedges. It helps always. I mean, it's never a bad thing to be good at, all 4 of the categories, but he's fine like on Bermuda with the putter. Like it's like he's fine. I don't see enough to prioritize him over some other heat check favorites or some other golfers with just better long-term form. Like most specifically, right at 9K or around there, Eric Van Rooyen, Sebastian Munoz, Denny McCarthy. Even I would probably prefer, even though he's very short game heavy. John Huh again at 89, I would prefer. So probably not getting there with Sam Ryder, just because I don't think he stacks up as well as some of the other value options.
We have a different list of value options, but I'd also agree that he doesn't quite make it because I like the other ones better. So different route to getting there, but still the same thought process where he's fine, but we like other guys more down here, and that's going to allow us to overlook Ryder for this week, despite some good finishes recently. Bookmaker odds for this week: Jordan Spieth, the favorite at FanDuel Sportsbook, he is 11-1. Tony Finau 13-1. Scotty Scheffler 15-1. Then there is a tier drop down to Abraham Ancer and Hideki Matsuyama at 19-1. Corey Connors is 21-1. Then there is another tier down to Ryan Palmer at 28. Brendan Steele and Charlie Hoffman are both 31-1. Cameron Tringali and Siwoo Kim are 33-1. So we talked about this before with the salaries being kind of flat. Does that influence anything for you with regards to your roster construction, or do you still think the most viable route is to go with the balanced approach we were talking about before?
So I think I'm fine with one of the studs, and it's going to be Tony Finau for me. And like, if I'm building one lineup, it's going to be Finau over Connors, over Spieth, over Scheffler, just because my model likes him, pretty easily compared to everyone else. So I'm looking more like Finau 10K, like 9,800 to 10K range, and then probably one golfer, around 9,000 is going to be what I most settle in on. So I really have to say that Finau is my preferred play at the top.
So if you go with Finau and Sebastian Munoz, I'm assuming that's going to be your guy, you have $9,900 left per golfer. That would get you that build that you're looking for. And I think that definitely works. I think that for me, I just really like going with the guys a little bit below Finau. Like, again, Connors I like a lot. I like Answer more than you do. I think that Tringali's very interesting. Hoffman works for sure. And using those guys allows me to be pretty balanced as well. So I think that I think that the overall takeaway is I like the guys in the high 10,000 range. I like Answer and Connors more than you. I think that's what we're saying here, right?
I think I like Connors as much as you, but I like Tony Finau way more than that.
Okay, that's fair. So as far as odds moving forward this week, it makes more sense to just look at things since they reopened after DJ withdrew. So looking just from then, after things reopened, has anybody moved significantly in that time?
Oh, yeah. DJ with a nice late add to the field, then the withdrawal. So
what was your favorite moment of the DJ in the Valero Texas Open field era? What was it?
I preferred the late addition to the withdrawal.
Same. We'll go with that. I agree.
So Cameron Davis moved from 47 to 1 on Monday afternoon when I repulled all this after DJ's withdrawal. From 47 to 1 on FanDuel Sportsbook to 43. Brandon Grace, 75 to 47. Lonto Griffin, our boy, 65 to 47. Sam Burns, also our boy, 60 to 47. Adam Hadwin, 75 to 65. Harry Higgs, John Huh, Sepp Straka from 95 to 80. Two of those are our boys currently. Doug Gim, 95 to 85. And then we did see some golfers actually lengthen, which was a little surprising just because you take out DJ. But Phil Mickelson from 80 to 90. Sebastian Munoz also from 80 to 90. So my boy, but also your boy, Matthew Neesmith, 95 to 110.
Hopefully he waited to bet him. Get that better number. Don't actually bet Matthew Neesmith, please. That's not an actual recommendation. I think so I talked about Lonto before. We talked about Sam Burns. I think that odds movement was not noteworthy. I think that they were just mispriced initially. I think that would be my argument. Like, I think they're still good, but I'm not liking them because their odds shifted. I think that was just a course correction with regards to their odds. I think they were just too long before. So I wouldn't take too much away from that. Possibly you could with Brandon Grace moving as much as he did. What does that do for you? Grace is $9,200. $9,200 paired with 47 to 1 odds. That's pretty short. I just don't personally see a lot in Grace's profile that gets me there outside of the odds. What about you?
He's fine. Again, like, he's basically your world average golfer, in terms of adjusted strokes gained. Good iron play, doesn't really stand out anywhere. He's a positive on Bermuda, but not substantially so. It's all right. I'm not really excited to play Brandon Grace though.
So speaking of Grace, so we talked about him. Which other lower salary golfers have odds that stand out to you for this week?
Adam Hadwin, Ricky Fowler, Andrew Putnam are all 65 to 1, right around that 9,500 range. So again, a lot of these golfers in that low 9K range that we're not super amped on. Matt Wallace, Byung-Hun An, 75 to 1. John Huh, Sepp Straka, Gary Woodland, Harry Higgs, Danny Willett, 80 to 1. Doug Gim, who I feel like is probably your boy this week, 85 to 1.
Why do you say that? Because you know that I'm going good drives gained?
It just felt like a Doug Gim week for you.
Every week is Doug Gim week. Come on. With Fowler, we're not going there, right?
I wanted to. I looked. The
Yeah.
iron play is so bad that you can't. You don't just go for. I mean, you can turn around the iron play, but to go from losing like 3 strokes from your approach play to gaining like 5 in the low end, probably because like that's kind of you're gonna gotta gain like 5 strokes with your approach to win. So, I mean, again, if you're not gonna win, you got to be low salaried, and he's not that. So
right. So I think that with Fowler, the good thing is we can feel happy for Ricky if he qualifies, even if we don't have exposure to him. So that's the nice hedge. We don't need to have exposure to him to be happy for him if he does qualify. So either way, pull him for you, Ricky. Just not in my lineups for this week. There actually is a weather angle to play for this event. Wind speeds will go down a bit as the day goes along on Thursday. They will be around 10 miles per hour at the first tee times, go up to around 12 before around noon or so. Then they'll decline from 1 p.m. on. So that's a slight edge for those teeing off later Thursday. And Friday is the exact opposite, where low winds Friday morning, but they increase as the day goes along. So I think that it's worthwhile to bump up golfers who tee off late Thursday and early Friday. I don't think you need to stack necessarily. I think it's a situation where it's just going to be, if you want lower aggregate wind speeds, you should use those guys. But like, let's say you have 2 guys in the same tier. So we talked about the Connors versus Scheffler bet before. I have Connors above Scheffler, but I think they're in the same tier. So if Scheffler tees off late Thursday, whereas Connors is early Thursday, I will happily flip and go Scheffler instead. I think that's kind of my takeaway here, where I do want to give a bump up to golfers teeing off late Thursday, early Friday, and doing it that way. Again, not stacking tee times, but actually bumping guys up based on when they're teeing off. The wind never gets above 13-ish miles per hour or so you don't need to factor in wind splits, including the weekend. But I do think bumping up golfers based on when they tee off is worthwhile. Brandon, based on that forecast, would you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, and I never really look at wind and waves to the point where I'm building lineups based on wind splits, just because they can be a little, unpredictable. What I'll stress is what I always stress: don't play golfers who aren't like good and don't fit your process just because they have, they look like they have an advantageous weather draw in terms of their tee times. Use it, like you said, as a tiebreaker. Just don't be like, if all the guys you really like are teeing off early on Thursday, maybe scale back a little bit, but don't don't build your entire lineups based on wind.
I think you move guys within tiers, but you don't move them from one tier to another. I think that's the way that I view it. You can move them within a tier, but if everyone in that tier is at the same tee time, or like if one tier is in the early tee times and the second tier below them is the late tee times, that's not going to be enough to make up that gap for me based on the way that I view tiers. So let's move into our play.
And just because like the wind is not super heavy.
Correct.
Like if it were heavier, I'd say, yeah.
Right. If it's going 5 to 20, cool. Like, go all out. It's 5 on Friday. It's 5 to 13 or 12. So don't go crazy, but I think you can move golfers within individual tiers. With that said, let's dive into our player picks here for the Valero Texas Open based on the salaries over at FanDuel.com. Starting off in the stud tier, Brandon, who is standing out to you there for this week?
Tony Finau. I think he can win this thing. I have him at 6.4% to win. Nobody else is above 3.8%. Who is Scotty Scheffler in my models, but I'm not quite as in on Scheffler for some reason, which feels like a mistake. But Finau, best long-term golfer if you adjust for field and recency in this field. Just the field leader in adjusted strokes gained tee to green over the past year. Best birdie maker. Roughly a baseline putter on Bermuda. I don't really want to overcomplicate it and not fade, but like deprioritize, de-emphasize the best golfer just because like Corey Connors is playing hot. I think that's a mistake.
Well,
not that Corey Connors is not a good play, but not prioritizing Finau over everyone else. I think that's the mistake.
Is Finau the first guy you go to in a cash game?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I think that's fair. I think that I'd agree with that too. For tournaments, maybe a bit more leniency to not go there, but for cash games, I agree. Finau is the number one play. My top high salary golfer is Corey Connors because we were talking about the putting before. It's not just the putting where he's getting more stable. The around the green play is also kind of interesting. And if we get Corey Connors with a non-terrible short game, that could be kind of scary. Connors has not lost more than 0.3 strokes around the green since the CJ Cup, which was back in October. That's a stretch of 10 events now. And in that time, Connors has 5 top 10s. He has 2 finishes outside the top 25 in that time. And it's possible both the putting and around the green play could regress. Like he could be playing out of his mind right now. Those could come back to earth. And if that does, he'll still be a good ball striker, but he won't be putting up top 10 finishes every week. But the sample on him. What?
Is that how math works?
Yeah. Oh, sure. But it's possible that these things have gotten better. And the sample on him being competent there is expanding. And it hasn't come at the expense of his ball striking. That's still really good. So I'm willing to bet on that right now. I think that if we were to get a read that Connors were to be a lot more popular than Finau, then even in tournaments I'm going Finau. But I don't think that'll be the case personally. Do you disagree?
So it's early, but FanShareSports.com has Connors tied for 6th with 11 tags, and Tony Finau is tied for 15th with 6 tags.
If that persists, I'll go Finau in tournaments for sure.
I'm saying I think Finau. The more I think about it, I think Finau will be just kind of overlooked. I don't know where Scheffler is, but I think that's a very interesting discussion. But let me sort it by FanDuel salary real quick. Yeah. So it's going to go Spieth and Connors very close, then Finau, and then Scheffler's not getting a whole lot of love.
Okay. I think that bumps up Finau and Scheffler quite a bit. I'm good at that. Who else do you like here in this upper range?
So I'm going to jump down a bit just because I have been talking about this 10K range the whole show. I'm going to go with Charlie Hoffman. We liked him last week as a clear cut above a very, very, very weak field. So in a field like this, that's not as weak by any means, but definitely not super strong. I think he's very relevant. He's a course stud with a win and a recent runner-up at TPC San Antonio. The irons are there for him, 93rd percentile when adjusted for field and recency. He's driving it well. He's putting it well. I just feel pretty safe with Charlie Hoffman here in a very important week for him at a course where he should feel super comfortable. Just feels like a really safe play with some upside too.
And as mentioned before, Hoffman doesn't seem like a guy who cracks under this kind of pressure based on his past performance. So I think that bodes well for him, where he probably will measure up well for the test. My preferred option here is Abraham Answer. So I have to talk you into him because you're not into Answer. He's 10-9 this week, which is, I think, a nice salary for someone as well-rounded as he is. Answer 34th or better in all 4 of my main stats this week. He ranks 8th in good drives gained. So should fare pretty well off the tee. And Answer is a guy who kind of stagnated over the summer, but he's picked back up since January 1st. He has gained at least 1 on approach in all 6 events. That's despite playing 2 rounds, just 2 rounds in 2 of those, and he's gained at least 1.6 off the tee 3 times there. Answer has played here twice when he was much younger. I don't really care about the finishes there. It's just nice to know he knows this course and is in really good form right now. I also do think that Cameron Tringali is in play if you want to play the well-rounded angle. So what is the issue that pushes you off of Answer this week?
I just don't think he fits the course as well as some other golfers. The around the green play is not quite as good as what we can get elsewhere for similar salaries. I am prioritizing distance just because accuracy is fine, but distance doesn't really go away. Accuracy can go away if you just miss your fairways. So for me, Answer just doesn't do enough to stand out. If he were like 10-5, I'd say, yeah, I think he's probably the better play, but for me, 400 does go a long way because it's the difference between getting back up to like Sam Burns and then saying, or, going with Eric Van Rooyen at 9,000 for me.
Oh, no. EVR is still on the never again list, despite being pretty good last week. Do you have any interest in Cam Tringali or no?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Moving to the mid-range, who stands out to you here?
Zach Johnson. 9,900. I think I've said it before, but like just that 9,000, or I should really say 91 to 97, sometimes is like where we live. It's like probably the heat check zone, I feel like. It's not it for me this week. I don't really find anyone in there who I particularly like. So I think it's a bit of a dead zone. I'm going to be trying to go above or below it. I think I am naming someone in that range, but it's just to kind of give some options at different salary tiers. But Johnson's the best long-term putter overall in this field. Good Bermuda splits for him, 82nd percentile. 3 top 30 finishes here in his past 4 starts. Fits for this range, I think. He's one of the better fits in this range, I should probably say. Second best long-term golfer, between 9 and 10K, trailing only Lonto Griffin, who I think we're both okay with. Has a win in Texas as well, Lonto does. But so does Zach Johnson at Fort Worth in 2012. I just looked it up. That's not something off the top of my head. But I'm so bad with like winners and when they won and that kind of stuff. But
right.
He's not particularly strong with the wedges, 50th percentile, but he's not weak, which I think is the real differentiation between someone like Sam Burns, who you're about to talk about. So I think Zach Johnson, maybe for that reason, is number 1 right in that range.
I think that's fair. I think that all 3 of Zach Johnson, Lonto Griffin, and Sam Burns are awesome, awesome plays. I think if you told me I had to roster one of them, I'd have a tough time choosing, but if I get to roster all 3, sweet. So I think that's the best pitch for...
Porque no los tres, right?
Sí. Por supuesto. Okay, so Sam Burns, we talked about a couple of times. He was a nightmare at the Players, and a lot of it was because he struggled off the tee. And I am going back to good drives gained this week, and you may think, okay, why would I go back to Burns if he was terrible at the Players, which where that was the angle, and it's a place where placement matters. Why would I go back to Burns here? But it's just really hard for me to pass up the upside with Burns, and it's not like Burns can't place it when he needs to. He just didn't that week. He's 53rd in good drives gained. Not his strength, but he's not wild. He ranks 16th in the field in approach, 8th in putting, 4th in birdies or better gained. If he can just not put it on the opposing, the next hole's fairway, he should be fine this week. And I think he has huge upside. So he finished 23rd here in 2019, gained 2.6 off the tee there. He is a much better golfer now than he was then. So I'll give Burns a run at 99. If you had to pick one, are you going Zach Johnson or Lonto here?
Probably ZJ, but it's close. I'm very strongly leaning toward having all 3 in my main lineup. And you said, I think, something like, why would you go back to Sam Burns after he was so bad? Because it was 2 rounds. And we know what the long-term sample is on Burns.
And he was also really good for stretches of those 2 rounds, giving me hope that he'd scramble back and make the cut, and then torpedoing that hope repeatedly.
Yeah.
I will never quit my boy. Who else do you like here in this mid-range?
Begrudgingly, I don't love this play, but I didn't want to just say Lonto and ZJ and just only talk about golfers in that range. But I think Aaron Wise is intriguing because of the data. So I wanted to point him out at least. The putting has been really bad for Wise, which is not atypical for him. But it's not like he can't ever putt. And that's kind of the distinction is if you have some spike weeks and you're inconsistent, we're more okay with that because if you catch the high end of your variance, then you can have a high-end finish. But his past 5 starts have come with negative 4.1, negative 10.2, negative 4.3, negative 1.9, and then a positive 2.7 strokes putting, which is very, very, very bad. But the week that he did gain strokes putting, he finished 13th at the Honda. He's basically always gaining strokes tee to green. The wedges are there, so you're basically looking at, if he doesn't lose 4 strokes putting, he should probably finish quite well. So I think Aaron Wise might be the one exception in this range. And if I, for example, only have 9,700 left and it can't quite get back up, Wise would be the one name in this range I actually feel somewhat good about.
I actually don't think there's anyone in this range I would feel good about.
Right.
Maybe that's just me, which is why I wanted to jump down to Doug Gim, who you alluded to before. You were right. It is a Doug Gim week. And you weren't into Gim when I brought him up most recently, but I'm going to go back here again. He benefits from a course with multiple routes to winning off the tee. Just 46th in distance, which isn't terrible. He's not losing distance, but he's not gaining. But he's 7th in good drives gained. And part of that is because his irons are so good. He ranks 20th in approach. That's helped him sit 14th, and birdies are better gained. The putting is not great, but it's not an absolute disaster. He's 101st in putting. If we look at overall putting, not specific to Bermuda, he can.
What is he on Bermuda?
I don't know. Brandon, you tell me.
Very bad.
But it's like overseeded with like POA.
It is.
So that's why I went overall putting as opposed to strictly Bermuda. That was my thought process. But regardless, that's maybe a justification for going Gim. I think at 91, I think he's going to do pretty well relative to other guys in this tier. And I think I'd rather jump down here than go with potentially even salary on the table, just because I think that the 92 to 96 range is a nightmare.
It is. I considered Gim. I just didn't get there. I think he's probably the best play at 91 to 97 specifically. So it's like I'm out on him, but I'm not in on him really.
Yeah. Okay, let's move down to the value range, which is a better range. So who do you like here?
I would rather just play Sebastian Munoz than Doug Gim. Maybe we can do a head-to-head on that. But
let me look. You talk and I'll look.
Munoz, his most recent stroke play event is a missed cut at the Players when he lost 3.4 strokes from approach, but gained everywhere else. He's had some really bad iron showings in recent events, which is kind of like a red flag and says, the form's not there, but he's generally a very consistent player across all 4 strokes gained categories. And at a certain point, you have to think a very good long-term player going through a bit of a cold stretch has to bounce back eventually, unless you think this is the end of his career and he'll never, ever be good again. Which I don't think that's the case for Sebastian Munoz. He's 73rd percentile or better in all 3 adjusted strokes gained tee to green stats, is a positive Bermuda putter. I'm cold jumping down to guys like Munoz at 9,000 than trying to be in that mid 9K range, which I think is, again, a pretty dead zone.
I actually will do a Gim Munoz head-to-head if you want that.
Did we have another one? I don't think I wrote it down.
I forgot. I think it was Connor Scheffler, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Connor Scheffler and then Gim versus Munoz. So 2 head-to-heads for this week. My first low-salaried guy, despite the lengthening odds, is Matthew NeSmith. He's a guy who tends to feast with his first 2 shots, at least based on the way I'm doing things for this week. And that's more than most golfers in this range can say. He ranks 10th in good drives gained, 6th in approach the past 50 rounds. That's pushed him up to 24th, and birdies are better gained. And he's there despite ranking 76th in putting. And the putting has been especially bad recently. But over a larger sample, he's more neutral. So the hope is that the putting regresses, or I guess progresses, and that can allow the ball striking to better stand out. So I like NeSmith quite a bit at $8,800. Brandon, your thoughts on Matthew NeSmith this week?
Again, fine. Basically, it's the ball striking's there. The short game isn't. I think the short game from the data that I see is more important this week than typical, or about as important. So I don't want to write off, or overlook that for someone like NeSmith, who I typically do like whenever I think I have a little bit more balanced options to go with. Okay.
Who else stands out to you in this value tier?
John Huh, 8,700. He's 93rd percentile combined in the strokes gained tee to green category, but is in the 16th percentile in putting. That is the problem. But again, more specifically compared to NeSmith, the around the green plays better. So it's their short game, and we sometimes think it's just putting, but it's not. In terms of how I describe it, but he's not long, 17th percentile. But again, I am prioritizing distance. You don't have to be long though necessarily. He gained strokes because of his accuracy, which I think can work here. It's kind of the gym path for this week. He consistently gains strokes off the tee just each and every week. The irons are solid. They're better when you adjust for field strength. He's played the Valero 7 times as well, with 2 missed cuts, so 5 made cuts. 1 top 20, but it was a runner-up back in 2012.
So Huh is $8,700. Do you prefer him over NeSmith?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to do a NeSmith Huh head-to-head?
Let's do it.
All right, cool. Let's just keep adding here. I think Huh is fine. I can definitely see why you're there. No pushback from me. I just prefer NeSmith over him. Another guy I like down here is Sepp Straka, another guy who is not going to feast off the tee at this event, but I'm fine with that, given the way that the course plays based on the way that I want to play it. The approach play and the putting should be good enough for Straka to overcome that. He ranks 30th in approach and 28th in putting. That puts him 15th in birdies or better gained. And he can have pop weeks. He's gained at least 3.3 in approach 7 separate times since golf resumed last year. He's got upside if he can pair that with his usual putting. And he's played this course just twice, and he did miss the cut, or just once he missed the cut. But in that event, in those 2 rounds, he gained 4.2 on approach. He was just terrible everywhere else. And his overall game is better now than it was then. So I think that Straka is pretty solid at $8,600. What are your thoughts on him, Brandon?
Yeah, so I have him as like an other to consider. Maybe not one of my top 2 featured in this range, but definitely someone in contention at that salary. Not quite like someone I would, if you could bet who's going to lead in strokes gained tee to green. Not someone I would necessarily. Not necessarily someone I would bet to do that, but I would not be surprised if he does because the ball striking is so good. It's just that around the green play is not there, but he's like a fine putter, so I think he's one of the better plays down here. And you can build around 2 or possibly even 3 golfers below 9K. I don't think it's the worst. Like, there are some names here. I just don't think it's the best overall process play because the win equity at the top is not quite high enough to force you to do that.
Okay, so let's finish up here with our win picks for this week based on the current odds over at FanDuel.com, and I am struggling to find who I want to pick, so I'm going to let you go first, and then I will decide who is standing out to you for this week.
Yeah, I've really had an issue with this because I usually try to find someone with actual positive value in my model, but I'm leaning toward more of this mid-range. And I will go with Sam Burns at least.
I was the one guy I was like, I can actually do this. Okay.
We are allowed to pick the same guy, but I did win the bobble hat for like the 4th week. So I typically get.
No, that's fine. So I will do a guy that actually is kind of similar to Burns from like a profile perspective. I'll go Lonto. Lonto also 47-1. So we have both guys at 47-1. Who is your second pick?
I was leaning toward like Zach Johnson even. Lonto was also in that conversation. I would probably realistically on my own bet Lonto as well. I'll go with Zach Johnson. Munoz was in the conversation, but I'll go with Zach Johnson.
Okay, so you have Zach Johnson and Sam Burns. I have Lonto, Griffin, and I might regret this, but let's go Cameron Tringali. 33-1. I like the balanced profile. He ranks 23rd in good drives gained, 14th in approach, 7th in birdies or better gained, and a really good putter. So good all-around profile based on what I'm looking at here for this week. So I think that Tringali at 33-1. I'm not getting the best number on him because he was 36 previously, but I think 33 is still long enough where I feel good about the balanced profile. So I'll have Tringali and Lonto. You have Burns and Zach Johnson as our win picks for this week. Brandon, any final thoughts for you before we close up shop and send off the good people to fill out their lineups?
Surprisingly a good week for golf. Yeah. A nice rebound from some of the past few weeks we've had. I think it's a good lead in to the Masters to get warmed up. And if you're just jumping in because you're, getting ready for the Masters, you haven't been following golf, we got a lot of content on numberFire, some win simulations, some more detailed picks and analysis, but we got you covered.
Not just on numberFire, but also right here on the FanDuel YouTube page. Make sure you're subscribed there. Brandon's Q&A is Tuesday, 3:30 p.m. Eastern. If you miss it live, you can go back and watch it. Watch Brandon work through his sheets. Won't be able to ask the questions, but you can still get in on that. That's 3:30 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Periscope pages. And our Masters preview, I don't know when we're recording it yet. Probably should have figured that out beforehand, but I'll tweet that out later. Once we figure that out, that'll be on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed and also recorded live on YouTube. Brandon, if people have questions for you on Twitter, where can they find you there?
I'm at Gdula13, GDULA13.
And I am at Jim Sannes, JimSannes. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you to our video producer, Joy Affleck. Joy's first time working the sticks over here, at least on this side of things with the heat check. So, Joy, thank you. We appreciate it, and looking forward to working with you once again in the very near future. Thank you to everyone for listening. Good luck to you, not only for the Valero Texas Open, but also all your other DFS lineups, including opening day MLB just around the corner. Masters next week. Going to be a fun run. We'll talk to you all again soon. This has been Heat Check Fantasy Podcast powered by numberFire.